build them. So anyway, my name is Dave Millhouse. I'm new to this. I've been here in GCGOP for maybe 2 months. So I don't know why I'm up here, except I'm kind of standing in for Joe Citino, and Joe's daughter is graduating tonight. So he asked me if I could kind of help him out. So anyway, welcome to all of you. Ron, will you lead us in the flag salute and also give an invocation?
Can I ask first if there's someone who would do our invocation? Usually prays pretty well. Suzanne?
Suzanne.
Hi.
Yeah.
Do prayer first. Good.
Yes, I want to read a verse that it popped up on my Bible app, and it says, each one of us is to please his neighbor for his good.
Yeah.
Each one of us is to please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. And here we are to build each other up and to help each other out. And that's how America is. So this week somebody liked the song that I posted. So I'm going to read it. It's Psalms 5. And it says like that. It's a prayer. It says, listen to my words, Lord. Consider my sighing. Pay attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God. For I pray to you. In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning, I plead my case to you and watch expectantly. For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil cannot dwell with you. The boastful cannot stand in your sight. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who tell lies. The Lord abhors violent and treacherous people. But I enter your house by the abundance of your faithful love. I bow down toward your holy temple in reverence, awe of you. Lord, lead me in your righteousness because of my adversaries. Make your way straight before me. For there's nothing reliable in what they say. Destruction is within them. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongues. Punish them, Lord. Let them fall by their own schemes. Drive them out because of their many crimes, for they rebel against you. But let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them shout for joy forever. May you shelter them, and may those who love your name, boast about you. For the Lord bless the righteous one, who surround him with favor like a shield. And I know that we all fault, but we are righteous not because of what we do, but what Jesus Christ has done for us. And because we open our heart to him, he dwells with us, and he wants to guide us. And as we grow knowing God, we change. Because that's what people do. When we get to know the Lord, we change. So, but this is the Old Testament. And the New Testament, it says to pray for those, your enemies, for those who persecute you. Bless them. So I'm going to pray for us that God will guide us. And I'm going to ask God to bless our enemies too. Because they don't know that what they're doing, their schemes is bringing their own destruction. So, Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you today because of your loving kindness, because I do not deserve anything, but because of your faithful love toward my life and toward each one of us, you gave yourself in us to create in us a new person. So Father God, right now, Lord God, I ask you that you will guide this meeting, that you will help us be strategic, Father God, to bring righteousness to our town, to our community. Lord, we need your protection. We need the protection on the children, on the individuals, and everyone, Lord. And we pray for our enemies, Lord God, because you died for them too. So, Lord God, I pray that their eyes of their understanding will be open, Father, and their hearts will be open to you. And thank you for this group, and I thank you, Lord, for the American people that love freedom, because you are a God of freedom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let us stand, flag is to the right, left, and do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any veterans in the room? Please stand. We thank you for your service. I'm just sorry the country is in the situation it is right now. I'm sorry. It's just not what you served for, what we raised our hands for, and I'm just sorry that we find ourselves in this situation. We've just got to double it up and work harder. We have less than a year and a half to save the country. It comes down to that. If we wake up on I think it's November 8th, and we find out the other side's won, then I don't want to even think of that day. You know, it was Ben Franklin that said, well, it wasn't Ben Franklin, it was a woman asked as he was coming out of the Constitutional Convention, what have you given us? And Ben answered, we've given you a republic if you can hold on to it. So we've got to hold on to that republic, because if it gets to November 8th, 2024, and the other side has won, we will have to look our kids in the eye, we'll have to look our grandkids in the eye, we have to look our friends in the eye and say, we lost the republic. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that we have to work doubly hard for these next 532 days. But who's counting? So I know that there's a fraction within the Republican Party here in Greenville County. And I know that there are some who are playing power politics. I understand there's also we the people. And if we remain fractured at this time, we may muddle through somehow, and we may wake up on November 8, 2024, and we may have won. But if we come together, we will be unstoppable. And that's the message that we have to get out to all in the Republican Party here in Greenville County. So consider what you can do. It's going to take all of this. It's going to take work. Don't think that it's just here in Greenville County. You all have a phone, I'm sure. Everybody got one of these? Well, you can call other states. You can do phone banking from your phone. If you want, you can even go to these underrepresented states, the poor Democratic states, and even walk door to door and plead our case. It's going to take that. So I just really hope that you're moved in your hearts and we're able to, on November 8th, 2024, we can say we're victorious and we're taking back this republic. It's going to stand. So anyway, that's all I have to say. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight, Yvonne Julian. Yvonne retired 35 years ago. No, she had worked. She had worked. I had to throw a little humor in. After 35 years working for this obscure chemical company, Dow Chemical. See, I can say that. I work for BASF, the world's largest. So anyway, but she had her career in research, sales, and marketing, and she started relocating to Greenville in 2015. She switched parties after being a drive-by Democrat by birth, and that happens in the black community, doesn't it? We got to change that. We got to get them back to the party of Lincoln, the party that passed the Civil Rights Act. We got to get them back. And it was basically, when she changed, it was basically because of Trump. The economic problems she saw from globalization, we see that with the World Economic Forum, illegal immigration, and Democratic politicians destroying cities and black communities. Issues she sees as important are political corruption. We know anything about that? And the money that is being misdirected or wasted in the political ecosystem. We can't afford to let money be misused in the next 532 days. She's very grateful for MAGA, American First Republicans in Greenville, and she is the reason that she's here today. So she's a committed conservative. She loves South Carolina, Greenville, and the United States of America. So it is my pleasure to introduce our chairman of Greenville County Republican Party, Yvonne Julian.
Well, you know, I mean, gosh, I tell you, what we always talk about God weeks, right? You people could not be better straight people. I mean, everything from Susanna's prayer to what Dave said were the things I wanted to hit on tonight. And wanted to start out by talking about just the concept of volunteers. So when Jeff and I talked to this woman, Vicki Tompkins, she is the chair of the El Paso County, Colorado Republican Party, and it's the 5th largest in the state. And we got involved with them, we started watching them because they had a very similar situation to what went on in Greenville. They had a takeover by the state party, they had a legal battle with their state party, so there were just a lot of similarities. But Jeff and I had the best conversation with her because she said people asked her why was she able to be so successful, and she said it's her volunteers. And so, I mean, that made me think. I said, because if you look at particularly, I mean, I deal with a lot of volunteers because of my work with the Arts Center, other non-for-profits I work with, but they're really businesses, so the volunteers that get involved there, they're doing it because it's something they like, you know, it's a little passion or hobby for them. But for people to, like you guys, you know, the party to volunteer in this arena is pretty fascinating because there's no fame. I mean, most people don't know what a precinct president is, so you can't go around bragging, oh, I'm PC, because they're like, oh, who cares, you know? What are you talking about? So that's good. There's no, for most of us, there's no money, there's no connections, and some people volunteer, particularly in places where there's a lot of people with money that hang out. They volunteer just to hang out, to, you know, sort of rub shoulders with people with money. So everybody here is amazing motivation, and I think that, you know, it's a real, you know, just kind of a tribute to selflessness. You see something bigger than yourselves, which I think is pretty unique. Not other people are able to do that. And you also have what I call future, not just me, but a lot of people call future think, which is the ability to sort of, it's like being a chess player. You can see how things move, and say, if we don't do this today, you can see, what's going to happen tomorrow. So you're really very special people, and I just want to applaud you for being here, and really thank you. And as I said, I would not be here if it were not for the America First, because I can tell you, having been in the party before it was America First, it was a very different party, And particularly even around the subject, just a quick story about their volunteers, they would have a person say, do a party because Nate Love said to do it. But there's no thought about what's the purpose of the party, what are we accomplishing, what's our goals, what's going to be the result. So they just don't think like that. But I think all of our group does. So anyway, thank you. So tonight, so this is I love, like all of us having fun, right? It's 1/3 fun. So we're going to start out with a little bit of a quiz. And so the quiz was, okay, there's 4 questions. The first is, what year was the Republican Party founded?
Mid-1800s.
Okay, you already got the number, I'll write it down.
1860.
Okay, 1860, but not 1860.
1863.
54.
And no looking at those phones. Okay, all right, let's say we'll go with that. Where was the first meeting?
Philadelphia.
You're close, okay. So we'll take that, we'll take Philadelphia, okay. Who was Jeanette Rankin?
Mr. Rankin's wife.
Okay, no takers on that one. And I didn't know any of this before I started preparing for this meeting, so it was actually fun to do. And the last was, what state was mentioned in the first Republican platform and why?
New York. South Carolina.
Who said Kansas? Okay, so fortunately, we have the answers on the next page. And so it was actually July 6, 1854 was the first meeting, okay? And it was actually, the first one was in Ripon, Wisconsin, and then there was actually one that took place in Jackson, Michigan, 2 months later in July. So depending on who you research, you'll see those. And Jeanette Rankin was the first woman to hold federal office. She was a Montana Republican, and she actually served 2 terms. And of course, the state that was mentioned, as you said, was Kansas, and it was all because of the battle over slave versus free states. So, just again to say, we have a proud history. We can get back to that history, because of our work. But I wanted to read you something too that really resonated with what Dave talked about in his introduction. And this is actually a paragraph from the first Republican platform. And this was actually what they did at Philadelphia, because that was actually a presidential year. So this I thought was really meaningful. And it's funny, you read this platform, it's scary how many of the same things they were battling then that we're battling today, and particularly with the issue of, Kansas. But I thought this sort of resonated. It says, resolved that we invite the affiliation and cooperation of the men of all parties, however differing from us in other respects, in support of the principles herein declared, and believing that the spirit of our institutions, as well as the Constitution of our country, guarantees liberty of conscience and equality of rights among all citizens, we oppose all legislation impairing their security. So what was going on was they were trying to get the Whigs, and there was actually something called the Know Nothing Party, but the whole point was to try to bring all those people together. And at that time, it was a kind of a clear common enemy, which was, slavery. And today I think it's, slavery, as you can call it, globalization. I mean, there's several of those clear enemies that we have, targets that we can focus on versus sort of, our little squabbles. And that's the other point I would make about good volunteers is, I think very unique because they work in situations like this one where there's no boss. Jeff can't say, Yvonne, if you don't do this, I'm gonna cut your paycheck, right? So you don't have that kind of leverage, but people are able to get, they're able to get past the little conflicts that happen, and just human nature. I mean, I hear people tell stories about what goes on in churches, you know. So people are able to work and get past all of that, the function, the good volunteers, the people who've been with us for 2 years, they just sort of, you know, they don't get distracted by that, they don't get caught up in it, you know. So anyway, I think that's the other, you know, kind of advantage of people like us who, you know, again, are selfless and you're committed to this mission and are not going to be distracted. They're willing to work, as Dave said. That's what we're talking about tonight, is the work. I mean, you know, it's going to be a tough, I mean, get ready, because it's going to be some sleepless nights, you know, if we do this right. Okay, so this is, so just start out to give, I hope you guys can see that okay, but this is just to set the, I can read it, I can read it off because it's just, the font got small, but this is just a little bit of a little mini organization chart to sort of set the stage. So at the top for us, you know, the party is for RNC, which is a 527, and basically it exists to raise money, you know, so that's its purpose. So we can forget about them, you know, because honestly, here's a funny story. I tried to call them like all week to try to get some, you know, some history information, or just to see, you know, what they had for state parties. I mean, the people don't even answer the phone. I mean, it's like calling the government, you know. So it was hilarious. It was a great experience. So what we get to is that under the RNC, you have the state parties, which are sort of chartered, and actually they're not subject to any control, you know. So the state parties are really independent. And then what we really want to talk about is you have the county parties, which, and we're going to forget about the other states, and we're going to focus on Greenville, which is us. And those county party organization heads, it's really that EC body that runs things. And for us here in Greenville, it's a maximum of 151 people because that's how many precincts we have. Now, the body is not that large because not all precincts are organized. But that's the idea, is that is the reporting, the voting body for the county. Okay, and then you start to get down into what is the structure of the organization. So on the left, we have Jeff Davis, who is our newly elected EC. So he's, of course, what his job is to go and represent us and talk to Drew McKissick. I'm Yvonne, of course, the party chair, and then first vice chair is Joe Gill. So, and then we have these other offices, which are essentially other vice positions, but they also are related to committees, which is what we're going to talk about in just a second. So you can see here we have the third vice, which is membership and reorg. We have no one in that position currently. Outreach, we have Griffin currently, but elections will take place for these at our meeting. Fifth vice chair, I saw Terry, she's events. And then, what are these committees that we're going to talk about tonight that we all want you to get involved in? So there are two kinds of them. There's what's called standing committees, and then there's what's called special committees. Okay? So one of the other, before we get to the committee parts, I thought this was kind of interesting as well to look at real quickly, because the ideas when we did, so the discussions that Chrissy and Nikki and some of us have had is about when we, you know, kind of retooling our committees and seeing what we want to do, is how do you put that together? Well, from a holistic standpoint, you know, everybody's work aligns. It's like, you know, the company. If the company has a mission, you got all these goals and objectives, and everybody's sort of channeling down that same road. Well, if we look at the elements of the platform, part of our work is to hold our elected officials accountable to the Republican platform. And so I think for us, it's, you know, it behooves us to start becoming more familiar with that platform and talk about exactly what's in it. And some of it's kind of funny, you know, because gambling is in that. And as I recall, I don't know if it's true because I have not fact checked it for myself, but I understand that, you know, Lindsey Graham gets a fair amount of money from gambling, you know. And I think there was recently, if I can't remember the story with details, but there was actually some story in the news about some sort of gambling facility that related to Nikki Haley and some of our other politicians. But anyway, it's just to show the kind of the irony and, you know, again, back to watch what they say when, you know, what do they do, you know. So anyway, so these are sort of the elements of the platform. And then I think there's one more slide there. Of course, some of it's pretty standard, you know, right to bear arms. But again, I think the idea that we had was to sort of kind of align our committees with those platforms. And then there's tons of issues that fall out as you do that. So now we're to the standing committees, and these are covered by Rule B. So if you go to the Greenville County website, you put the rules, and it's not long, you'll see Rule 6B, and it tells you about those standing committees. And so those are candidate recruitment and liaison. So we have Joe Farmer here tonight. Is he still there? So part of our job as an EC body is to help recruit candidates and support Republican candidates. So we'll be inviting Joe and Mayor Knox White to speak at our meeting. Joe has his literature tonight. We can have him say a few words, but that's part of what we signed up to do, is to help that effort. The next is the Finance Committee. That one's pretty straightforward. Membership and precinct reorganization, we just went through that, so I think we're pretty clear on what that one does. And then the other is the Rules Committee. Okay? And so you say, how do those committees get built? What happens? So what will happen is at our June 5th meeting is the EC body, so people will step up hopefully and say, I want to be, on that membership and reorg committee. So somebody volunteers, and then people will vote, and there's 2 spots that the EC body votes on for those standing committees. Okay, and then after those 2 people are voted on and approved, then the chairperson, which is me, I appoint a 3rd, and then the 4th one, those 3 people appoint. So that's the way that process should work. Any questions?
With memberships in precinct reorg, so given the fact that the state inserted themselves into the process this past year, is part of the goal for that committee to ensure a process that's stable, that's demonstrable, to avoid that same thing happening again in 2 years? Did that make sense?
It did, and I would say yes. That should be one of the goals.
Okay.
Yeah, but that really involves 2 issues, because there's also a convention component of that. Right. Because if you think about it, what they really took over was they could care less. The convention was what they wanted, because that was the part that they had the most control over,
And not just out of the money.
Right, that's exactly right. So, but to your point, yes, that should be one of the goals. And you bring up a good point, Jim, about with all of the committees, it's easy for us because we'll get to the slide that shows about what the overall, the arching goals are. But for the committees, the hard work for you guys, all you volunteers and the committees, is going to be to get together and say, what are our goals? What do we want to do as a group? What's the plan? Who's going to do the work? So, and then how you marry that to the overall plan. So it's easy for me to, I can say, okay, these are the numbers, we've got that part laid out. But the committees, you have to have a level of granularity, and then also make sure what you're doing and talking about and fits into what the overall picture is. Okay? Okay, so then these are the fun special committees. And those are committees that, thanks to, we've had them since we started. And I don't know if Linda Craig's not here, but some of them sort of were spontaneous because they came about because of a crisis. And if you think about the crisis with COVID and, the whole issue with vaccines, that committee just kind of popped up, and we were doing, we were organizing protests, in front of the Peace Center. People had bullhorns, because it seems like a faint memory now, but that was a very hard time, particularly for people who believe in freedom, who believe in the Constitution. And it was a tough time too, because fear is a tool that people will use against you, And so people were so afraid. People are telling you information, you don't know if it's true. But that was a tough time. But the medical freedom popped up. But we decided, that's also, if you look at the Republican platform, they have an item around health care. And so that really is an ongoing issue. When you start to deep dive into it, there's other things that become involved. There's what happens when you have a place like USC doing the MUSC doing gender surgery. And I can remember when Jeff and a couple of other of us went down, a bunch of us went down to Columbia to testify in front of the Medical Freedom Committee to talk about ivermectin and some of the other things that, would have been very helpful to us at the time, but were very difficult to get, impossible to get from the medical establishment. we had two doctors here that people talked about, Doctors Kimberlin and I forget his name, but they were a godsend because a lot of our people went to them, you know, when they were COVID, because the automatic thing that the medical establishment was going to do was to tell you to get a shot, you know, or, you know, you were not cooperating, just not to treat you. So, but to go down there to see those people, you have to be there to see it. To see those MUSC people and the DHEC people walk in there with white coats on. I mean, the arrogance was absolutely amazing, you know. And it's to walk in there like, you people don't know what you're doing, you know. And so that's why I think, you know, we as a group think that something like healthcare, it's always going to be an issue. We're always going to be fighting people who want free healthcare in the U.S., who want us to be like, you know, Calvin, you're from Canada. They want us to be like Canada or like, you know. And so that's an ongoing battle because that's, again, part of that push to socialism and bigger government. So some of the others, so that's sort of the list that we've come up with at this point. So those are really your opportunities. You know, you have and look at I would say, so some of the other issues that we talked about that people are passionate about, think about digital currency, for example. Okay, so if you want to work on that, you have to think about you have to sort of wrap your brain around it. But in the big picture, what that is an economic issue. So underneath that, there's other related economic issues as well. So what you want to do is you have sort of a big umbrella item that's on the platform, but then where your interests are, you go in and you say, I want to tackle this part. So it's that you hear about that salami technique where you're kind of slicing the issue up into bits that you can digest and target. So that's the goal really for all of these committees, to find a place where people are passionate and have the time and energy and want to put into it, and then at the end of the day to be effective. So, everybody, you have a real opportunity for leadership here. Susanna talked about helping your brothers for sharing information because we're in an information war, as Jeff says, and it's not possible for all of us to know everything. So as you get involved in these committees, you're going to become experts in certain areas, and people are going to look to you. People are going to look to you. We talk about writing legislation. So when Christy and I talked about where there was a discussion about do we want to have one legislative committee, I said, well, legislation touches us in two ways, because you have the Legislative Action Committee, and that's legislation that's already been put in place that are the people are working on, and they may call us to talk about. The other part of that is legislation that we can help write. I mean, I remember us doing a press conference, or being in a press conference in front of the old county building, and Jennifer Black was there, and she had been helping our legislators write legislation, and that's what we should all be doing. Yeah. So I think that's a great list. All of this is always a work in process, but hopefully areas for you to get involved. And I'm going to highlight right now because we have, again, candidate recruitment. So we want to have Joe say a few words, but we're also, the other big part of this is the communications and public relations. And Linda, we're going to have her say a few words because there's an action item there. Because again, remember for us, all of it is about how are we using these committees and what we do to fulfill our goals. And
Can we still ask questions?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
On the previous slide, the special committee for 2025 reorg and convention, how does that relate with the standing committee for membership and precinct reorg?
They're two separate committees, but they'll probably do some of the same things. The special committees are, you have a little more flexibility in the membership of those.
Okay.
You don't have to vote, so it gives you just a little more flexibility. You can maybe have more people, so they should be working together.
And one final question, I promise.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem. Can you belong to more than one committee?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, work. That's our kind of work. Free labor. We need more. So I want to highlight those because, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
Is there like a committee for law and order, Second Amendment, or like just issues with law enforcement and?
There is manager or chairman.
Yeah, exactly. That's not. It's interesting because we actually had. So we actually did Right to Life, and that's actually a great question, Carrie, because it brings up a discussion that we had about really as a Republican, how do you look at life? So there's certainly the pro-life part of it, but there's also the element of safety, because it kind of is about changing the narrative, and, some of the things that the Democrats have said. So, a person who is unborn has a right to life, but a person who is born as well. So how does defund the police support right to life? So to your point, there's not a specific committee, but these are kind of just labels. But if somebody wants to work on that issue and it's important, we'll find a place for you. But I think that's kind of a more holistic view, because it really is, I think, really shows more of a commitment, and really more of a commitment to the citizens and what kind of quality of life and what quality of life does a republic bring? Which is, how dare you talk about, defunding the police when you're not talking about crime victims? So I think that's kind of it. But again, there's easy to work on those. But at this point, there's not a specific committee that addresses that. Okay, does that answer your?
But why wouldn't legislative action be the committee that would deal with anything that you want the legislature to do?
It is, but that's
gun rights. That's a legislative issue.
Right. But that's for, you have to create the legislation first. So that committee does deal with it once it becomes legislation. But suppose there's not legislation out there on an issue.
Well, a lot of times there is. It's not legislation per se.
Right.
But it is, lawyers have written bills.
Right.
And have written civil asset forfeiture, for example,
right,
is the one I care about. And that one, there is a proposed bill that exists. It's just a matter of going to the source and getting a copy of it and having somebody write up a whereas. And, if the precinct wants to accept it, then we bring it forward. It goes through the precinct first, right?
Well, anybody can present legislation, but you got to find a legislative sponsor. I mean, you write it up, and you've got to work with them. So if it has not been created yet, there's some preliminary work you have to do, and that's the work you can do in committees.
Right.
So I'm saying attack the legislative issue on two fronts. Because we're always going to get calls to action. I mean, that's the other thing. We see that, every other day somebody calls us and say, call about my bill. But that's legislation that's on the floor. It's in committee, it's supposed to come out of committee, doesn't, but that's at a different stage. But we also need to be involved to talk about the legislation that doesn't even exist that would be the right, Yeah, so that's the kind of the grassroots commitment to this whole effort, and not taking our eye off the ball, And so, again, back to this. So why this civic engagement? Why do this? I mean, why not be home watching? Okay, it's almost 8 o'clock, and pretty soon it'll be time for Andy Griffin, because So why do this? Why be out? On a weeknight? Well, again, because as I talked about earlier, you're kind of a unique group of people. But what does it really do is we will not meet the goals of the party without the committees and without you guys being engaged. So we can put it up there on paper, we can make a nice slide, but until the work, the actual work happens, we can't do it. And it's like Dave talked about, we said, this may be sort of one of those last stands, where you've got to do this grunt work to get to the goal that you want. And so growing the party membership, well, is it about having 10,000 members in the Greenville County Party? Well, maybe, but it's more than that. Because these are people who are supporting the party financially, but even more critically is they can have somebody come out and vote in that primary. Yeah. And so it's bringing transparency on elected official voting records. So how does that happen? Is Thomas Beach going to come to us, Austin, and say, Austin, here's how I voted on every bill. What do you think? No, it's not going to happen. We're going to have to do that work ourselves. And so we've got to do the research ourselves, but we also have to be familiar enough to talk about the platform to say this is why this your vote does or does not, align with the platform goals.
That's a good call, because that's my favorite issue.
What?
That one, transparency on the voting.
Oh yeah.
That's what
Exactly.
I'm going to try to do.
Right, that's exactly right. So there's a perfect spot for you to get involved. So we also support elected officials and candidates. because particularly the new ones that we're bringing in, you know, so that's going to be because it will take work to get those, because just realize that a lot of these people are not going to be supported by the establishment. A lot of the people we would want, because they're not aligned with them. So that's the work that we'll have to do ourselves. And then, of course, the primary turnout. Now, that's just a snip from the actual Greenville County elections webpage. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you, because I think that registered voters is Democrats and Republicans, right?
It's all voters.
That's right. So that's right. So that means out of that primary, so it's ridiculous to say that, but we don't have party registration. That's another issue. But so 48,000 ballots cast in our primary.
The people that show up are making the decisions.
Yes, exactly right. And that's what we learned in biblical citizenship. Basically, we're turning over a lot of our power to a very narrow slice of people. Yeah.
I can't see the numbers from.
Oh, it's, so the ballots this is 14.42%, so that was our turnout.
What's that? I can't read it. What's the number?
14.42.
48,000.
And no, this 48,500, so it's 48,500 ballots.
Out of
So the
336,000.
Pardon? Yeah, the last primary.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the last primary, so for Greenville County, so. And it's, in the state was not that great either, but that's what we care about. So the goal would be to make this number 28, to double that. And that would be significant. If we had that kind, we could have, if we had the power, we actually could have probably potentially changed Timmons' race with some changes in the, you know, with the, of course, with the different strategy around the candidates as well. But you get those kind of numbers, then that's when you start to be able to really make a difference. And you start to have them respect you and fear you, because right now they don't. They have absolutely no reason. I mean, there's absolutely no reason, you know, and they're kind of, you know, twirling and, you know, saying, oh, patting themselves on the back about the convention when, you know, this is a state chairman that came within 16 votes of being in a runoff. You know, and somebody who is going to be the number 2 guy at the RNC, you know. So, you know, they're talking about how we failed, but I mean, for us, I mean, the 2 huge victories is, first of all, just that itself, you know, from a group that they call lepers. And that's the part that really kind of bothers me the most, is the disdain they have for people who are professionals, who, you know, raise families, who work who are very skilled. I mean, but just the real disdain, you know, but, you know, so I think that part, but that victory, and then also having people see for themselves that weaponizing of Robert's Rules of Order by Brandon Newton, and I have not fact-checked this either, but I saw something about him being one of these WEF darlings, and I said, oh man, we can go after this boy. You know, I guess he better get ready. So again, I have to, you know, verify it, but you know, if that's true, I mean, this whole WEF crowd, Nikki Haley, I mean, all of these people, we don't care, you know, about the World Economic Forum. Sorry. What do you think?
I'd like to make a clarification here. Why it's important to be in primaries is that we assume as Republicans, oh, they're going to vote Republican.
You're right.
And that's not really how they vote. And unless we control the primaries, we don't get them to pass legislation good for the people.
That's exactly right. And our system is rigged on purpose. It is on purpose that we have open primaries. And when you start to look at these people's voting records versus what their party says, you start to see that it basically been, and who knows how long they've been doing this, they're basically manipulating the system to have the candidates that they want, you know, to win the primaries, you know. And several people have pointed out how few no Trump signs there were on the entrance to the convention on Saturday. You know. So we're thinking, you know, get ready. Is there, you know, what's going to go on with that? Sure.
The no Trump people, like our Republican Party, when it came time to defend Trump and make decisions that honestly spoke about how he did win and how it was stolen in Washington, they're all liars.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't look at the evidence, so no, they didn't see anything.
Right.
Exactly. They don't see. But our party's not acting like Republican creed, mission, the conservative, they're acting just like Democrats.
Right. Well, that's right, because they are, number one, they are protectors of government. So the phrase is, it's government first and America last. And both parties are involved in it because they are benefiting tremendously by this setup. So the evidence, the truth, none of that matters because they're, unlike people like you guys who are selfless, you know, who are servant leaders, they are self-serving. And we might, you know, we're human. I mean, that's the, unfortunately, socialism, all of that really appeals to the worst of human nature. Everything the Democrats do and the left does appeals to the sin nature of people. Whether it's addiction, whether it's lazy, if you just think about it, it appeals to the part that's very easy. I mean, somebody said in our Bible study, just said, think about it. You don't have to teach a 2-year-old to be bad. You know, so the stuff, the hard work, the stuff that we want to do, the stuff that we you know, we take pride in, it's the hard stuff to do. And so this is where we get to the part where, again, to plead for your input. So you're going to be getting there'll be 2 surveys going out. One is around the EC work process. So those of you ECs will need that. But then the other part, which is the exciting part, is the volunteer participation, interest participation survey. And then, so I would like to have Chrissy and Dylan, I saw you talk about that. If you guys could talk about that for a minute. Sure. Okay.
Just come up.
Yeah, that's great. I love these guys. I love tech people. Yay!
Right. His mom, Nikki Peters, she couldn't be here tonight, but she did a fabulous job. She put together a short survey, but I think it's very comprehensive. It's not going to take you long to fill out at all. There's a link to it, and it'll just take you to a Gmail where you can fill it out. But there's also this QR code that she created. So we have copies of these. We'll pass them around. You can just scan this on your phone and sign up tonight for those committees that you saw up there. There's also a skills portion. One of the things that Yvonne mentioned, wouldn't it be nice if people with certain skills could teach other people those skills? So for example, I think I saw the Linux person here. Yeah, there we go. Yep. He's willing to give us a class on Linux. So maybe there's other people that would teach us all how to do QR codes. But we all have skills that we can share. So that's part of the survey as well. So we will hand these out. If anybody would like a paper copy, we're happy to run to the copy machine and make those as well. Yep. Okay. 1, 2. How many?
Count. Let's see.
The survey.
I can put it this way, it's not free to make copies, so if it's all possible, I kind of like to avoid doing that, but if
Yep,
you're...
we can post this as well. We can put this on the website and put a link. So we can do that as well. Start. I'll put
If you
one
really
here,
want
and
a
we'll
paper
hand them
copy,
around.
I'll go get it.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
That's going to be on the website.
Yes.
And we actually will also do, because there'll be a link, there'll be another survey as well, so we'll be doing an email that we'll have, we can do that as well, so it goes to the entire body, so no worries. And it's actually very easy, so. And thank you, Dylan, thank you very much, we really appreciate you.
So does anyone else want a hard copy? No? Okay, one, keep your hands up, I can, all right, 1, 2, 3, that's it? Yeah, just 3.
I think, hey, you guys, is it just 3 people? Hello, Tom? Is it just 3 people that you
You can put your hands up if you want a hard copy of the survey.
It's 10 cents a page to have a copy, and I'll pay for the copies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so how many copies do you think we need? 200.
No.
All right, got 1, 2, 3, and then 4 there. So, 4, I guess.
Thank you. And so I'll put in a plug for the EC survey too, because that's the one where we want to try to get a commitment, and it's something we'll have to vote on at the meeting, but get a commitment for ECs to work with their precinct people to report the voter contacts. Because as we've talked about, the knocking on the door of the first time of a stranger and asking them to vote is probably not the most of the time that's not going to work. You know, if it's somebody who has a propensity to vote anyway, it's not an issue. But if you're trying to grow the party, you're talking a different subset of people. And so there is a science to sort of developing relationships. And part of what we want to do there is it's not just a door knock, but it's the literature drops, putting information. It's the, inviting them to the pig roast that we're going to have and the jambalaya. So it's the baseball game. So all the events, but again, to build that contact. So you have a basis for knocking on the door and saying, please come out and vote. So I'll put a plug in for that survey as well. And then I'd like, also at this point ask a question about what tools would you as volunteers like to see? I mean, as you think about the committees you'd like to get involved with, what you'd like to do, is there anything that you can think of? Because we have a great team, Linda Young, Chrissy, Nick Dillon's mom, they're really good at putting together these tools. Is there anything that anybody would like to volunteer to say? I think I could, if I really had this, it would make me a more effective volunteer. I do.
I think we need to teach the little ones, even the little ones of this group, just have things while we get together or something, the little kids, or just have something for little kids and teach them about history and, I don't know, Robert's rules and I'm sure they're learning that at home, but maybe not.
So are you saying that? Are you saying that as a volunteer, like if you were at a volunteer meeting, you'd like to have an activity for young people?
I just think it'd be nice to include the little kids.
Okay.
And catch them while they're, really little, where it's just.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of what you mean by tools?
Well, okay, so a tool to me would be a list. Okay, a list of these are, or just the kind of, where do I go to find something, a reference. It's where do I put my information? Okay, so I've done all this work. Where do I put it? Who do I talk to about this? Who do I call by? So just it's the same way you think of tools at a job.
Because right now, almost everything is done by email.
That's exactly right. And so we want to try to drive people to the website, because the problem with emails is emails change. And also it's very difficult, just even, I know Libby and I, we talked about just even visually, sometimes it's hard to get a lot of information in an email. It's just like you can only hear so much, you can only absorb so much. So you want to, even visually, it has to be formatted so it's useful and people can grasp it quickly. Yes, ma'am.
I went to LinkedIn the other day, and I had signed up for Greenville, GOP, and all
Yes,
the
ma'am.
different ones. And the last time it was updated was like August, of links to get different information.
Right.
So maybe if that could be updated, and
Yeah.
even a listing of just different, you can give people, hey, these are different sites you could go to get information.
Right. And so are you still in the workforce? Because this is a good place to come, but we also have coffee and politics. LinkedIn, I don't have a LinkedIn profile. It's a very woke site. And if I was in work, I would do it because I have to, but as a giver.
It is very, but it's good to be able to, because I have no problem saying how I feel on LinkedIn.
Right.
And I'm pleased with the amount of people that like and make comments back, so I think that's kind of
Right.
because everybody's aware of the only
Right.
system and how it is.
Right.
And things are kind of changing on there, so that could be our opportunity for us.
Right, that's a good point. It's a good resource. People use Nextdoor a lot. I've heard Deb talks about that one. Yeah, so Nextdoor, yeah, but that's a good point, a resource.
There's also Public Square. I don't know if anybody has that, but that's an app that's come about that
Right.
is all Patriot participation.
Okay.
I found my lawn guy through there, and you get a $10 discount the first
Oh, that's great, okay.
Everything you can think of, and that's a good way I think to find out.
Right, that's a good suggestion. So we'll probably put together a good site, because somebody was asking that same question the other day. I think Deb had on our Signal page, was asking, is this a good site? So we sort of need to vet, because we talk about vetting candidates, but we also need to vet these NGOs and all these other organizations, because there's so many places to take your time, So that's a good suggestion. Yes, Jean? Yes, Gary Jean.
Okay. Talking about new members, I was thinking I could get familiar with all of the committees, and that could actually be a meeting, for new members. And, do callbacks and get feedback and get questions and from the person, see if they have any questions.
Right. Well, that's outreach.
Well, I can't read that bold at all.
Right, exactly. But the outreach committee is the one that does exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
And that's connected with kind of what I already do.
Right, exactly. It's a greeter, that's correct. I'm sorry, go ahead, Judy.
So, a couple of things that you said that would help me, and you may already have them, but like the upcoming important dates that are coming up, like whatever you mentioned.
Right.
The other thing is that I know sometimes, like when these committees are meeting, or when someone goes someplace to a meeting, it might be interesting for me to see what are the highlights or the talking points that would be helpful is that are the issues that are coming up. So when you're talking to people.
So you're talking about output from the committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think we're gonna, because I'm not as silver-tongued as Jeff, we're gonna add more structure to Coffee and Politics, so you guys have to do more of the talking. And so I think that was one of the things that we actually had as a potential agenda item, is to have people report from committees,
But
So.
also maybe on the e-newsletter.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Everybody shows up at the coffee, or you might miss one.
Right, that's true, yeah, okay. So committee output,
Or
okay.
even like a meeting like this, at the end of meetings at work, they'll email the materials used in the meeting. So we would like to get an email of this slide presentation that
okay.
we sent to everybody.
Oh, I see what you're
So
saying,
you can
okay.
pull it up and it jogs your memory.
Okay, gotcha, okay, good
Something
idea.
like that.
Okay.
I think if you had a committee for resources that the other committees could go to for help on an item they're having trouble with, and that committee could maybe give them some resources to help them.
Right. And that is kind of a little bit the purpose of, like, for example, the communication and public relations, for example, that's intended to be a resource committee. So your way of thinking, if you want a flyer for an event, what you can do is, sort of design, and you take it to that committee, and they can help you with it.
I'm thinking more of it from an informational.
Oh, an information resource, gotcha, okay.
Internal resource.
Internal resource, gotcha, okay. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to let everybody on the Zoom call know that the survey link is live for you in the chat box, so you can go ahead and fill that out if you would, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there one survey? Two.
There's two surveys. One is for ECs only, and that's around the work process. But then the one tonight that they're handing out is just strictly the, I'm just doing a reminder because the EC one will come because we need to get that data before we have the vote on June 5th. But that's not being handed out
How do
tonight.
we get to the EC survey?
We're gonna send out links to it. So it's gonna be a link just like the survey, but it's a different survey. Okay. Okay. Yes,
I
ma'am.
have an idea.
Okay.
Every time there is
Sure. Hey guys, where's my cowbell?
When
Okay.
there is a meeting or something, we have to scroll everywhere to find out where we're supposed to be going. And that has been a challenge because people are calling me, Susana, I don't know where it's supposed to be or where, and I'm going like 5 different signals trying to find out where to go. So I have an idea. And you know how you have a calendar?
Yes.
And you should say there at 8 in the morning, school, lunch, library, 6 o'clock, you know, the meeting at the headquarters, okay? And when you press that, it should go and tell you what address and what location, so that way people can go, you know, and instead of, because it's very hard, you know, because we put the information, but then everybody comments. So by the time I have to go through the feed, you know, we lose the time, and it gets frustrating, and I don't want people to get discouraged, and we need to, since it's so much information and so many things happening at that moment, it's like, call this bill, or call this person, or do this, or do that. So even in the calendar, we should have like a button to say, okay, who should we call today for what bill? So somebody will put the bill, and that day we know, okay, I'm supposed to call that bill, check, and I go.
What we need is a live event calendar that the people who
Yes.
plan the events can easily update in real time just by sending a text. Like add something to it. You don't have to pull it up and edit it and do all that stuff. Just
That's right. And the commitment would be the people to send the information. Because I had the same discussion you're talking about with a legislator. I said, you guys expect, Adam Morgan calls, he wants me to get everybody at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because he's got some bill that he's worried about. I said, you know, this is the first we've heard of this. So you gotta be working with us all along to make that work, because there's two issues. There's the mechanics of it, and then there's the information itself. So who's gonna do the information? The mechanics, I think calendaring or a live event is a great idea, but people have gotta commit to do the information, because there's nobody who's gonna know all of that. And that's what the committees will know.
Yeah, today, like, she sent me a bit, email, and I'm sorry, because I've been working something else. And she says, call, and I just put my finger, and it went, and I filled out, you know, what I wanted to say extra.
Right.
And it went to the legislator, and I don't know how they do it. When the
Pre-filled form.
Right.
You know? So we need some stuff like that, because we just don't have the time, I mean, to go through the state house and find out.
Right, and that's what our committees are gonna do. The people on the committees, whatever that issue that you're talking about, that's what, you know, they said, okay, we've got this coming up, whatever committee was involved in that issue, that should be one of the things that they should do to be effective.
When you get a call to action, it should have a link.
That's right.
When you click on it, everything is pre-filled with your information, and you add.
Right.
If you can make it easy to do, I get them at work.
Right.
And if I can do this and I can do it and be done in 15 seconds, you'll get 100% response.
More response, exactly right.
Because people don't have time to go, look, I gotta do it, I'll do it when I get home.
That's right.
Opportunity lost.
What are you gonna say, Patty?
So, when I first started going to meetings, I noticed that Libby and whoever her companion is.
Joe,
they have a binder for, when they were, going out and recruiting members and stuff, and they have it together. I mean, they really got it together. I want that kind of training. I need a procedure manual. Like, we don't know what to do in our precinct meeting when we're supposed to have a meeting, what we're gonna talk about. We're neighbors, we see each other all the time. Like, are we gonna have a precinct meeting with other people so we can what to do? But my major point is that it would be really nice to have some kind of binder that had procedure, like, okay, this is how you go out and you knock on doors and what you say or whatever, you know, and finding out who are the people that we want to go to, so we're not knocking on everybody's door. And I know that there was a problem with the hard list. I don't know if there's any good that's changed with that or whatever.
Well, you make a good point. I would say one thing, I'd say, first of all, think about that. What we're trying to do, if you look at the goals we have, So we're trying to do something that's different. Jeff always used the idea of a startup company. So the reason that a lot of what you talk about is not available is because there was no interest in doing this. So we're having to create it.
Right.
And so the other point that I would make is that's where, so there is no rule about how many precinct meetings you have. That you as a leader get to determine. And if you do it, that means you're good. You decide. So you think about, what the goals are, so you get to decide that, because that's, we're kind of about freedom and, so the basic tools we can give you, we can say, this is who you are. We can give you a list of your precinct leaders. You can say this, but other than that, it's, you get to make the decision. So you ask people, you talk to others, you say what's worked, but that's how it is. This is not like you go into work and they say, okay, Patty, okay, you show up at this desk at 5 o'clock, and then you do this, and then you go home, that's the, and that's, even for me, it's a little bit, I have to, Jeff, I know we sent out a list, and the people said, well, this is what we needed, and Jeff said, I'll fix it, but I got it, because I'm used to, you think a certain way, but remember, this is not a workplace where everything that we might like or want and all the information, everything is available. That's what we're kind of creating. So that's just a reminder.
So basically, like at our precinct meeting, we're gonna be making a strategy as to how we're gonna grow our precinct.
That's right, that's right.
Right, but that's why we want you to do it in regions.
Right.
So you're doing it with 10 other precincts, because you might not know, but hopefully somebody in one of the other precincts will know. It can guide the whole region. Yes, it will be okay.
It'll be good.
Right. But we've got to get regions meeting together, and people within the regions have to step up and do it.
And that's where you see the leadership. That's how you talk about realizing who are good leaders or campaign people. You just watch people's behavior. That's how you know.
So who's doing that for each region? Is there an EC from within the region?
Well, that's again the region. So we did have zone leaders for reorg. Some of those people are still sort of functioning in that role. Some of them are not. But if you get together with your other precincts, you guys kind of decide if it's something you're interested in. And we can send you the list. So the important thing is knowing who to contact.
Right.
And that's
like Dave said, we've only got 500.
For 32 days. That's why I love that. I love it. We need a clock in HQ, like a countdown clock.
Love it.
Yeah.
But we've got the list of those regions out there, the precincts. Just take the lead, grab hold of it, and say, you know what? We have the June 5th meeting is coming up. That's kind of a big meeting. Just go ahead and a week or 2 weeks after that, have a region meeting and replicate what we do on the county.
Right. You get the EC survey. You can call other ECs and say, what do you think about this? How can we work together on doing a survey day? There's a lot of ways to open that conversation.
So we should talk with our EC though, right? I'm not an EC.
Well, that's okay. Talk to your EC.
Right, because you got to do the work. The EC is just the reporting person.
And to be a regional leader, you don't have to be an EC.
That's right.
The green box is to the top.
That's right.
That's right.
Can we hear from Joe about what he's going to do?
Yes, exactly. That's our next call to action. We are going to hear from him, and then we'll hear from you, and then that'll be it. So this is talking about, okay.
Real quick question. On the slide before, can you clarify where it says how many members per committee? I was a little confused on that.
Oh, sorry. So on the standing, so there's no rule about for special committees. There is a rule that tells you how the 4 standing committee members are, how those committee members are appointed, but then after that, it's up to the committee. We don't run, the committee runs itself.
So there's 4 voting members plus the chair.
Right.
The chair splits it votes if there's 2 to 2. But what we would do, like in reorg, you need more than 5 people, and you really can't count on the chair. Definitely couldn't count on the last one. So we had people in the reorg committee that were non-voting members. So these are voting members of the committee. We didn't really vote on anything, so there's really not much to do. But technically, they're voting members. The chair splits the vote. But we would add as many non-voting members.
Right, because you want people to do the work. Who are interested in doing the work. That's the issue. So, okay, so our 2 calls to action, 2 fund committees, the candidate recruitment will have Joe, and then Linda's going to talk about the baseball game. Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Yay, go.
If you don't know me, my name is Joe Farmer. I'm running for mayor of Greenville. I have two things going on right now. One is candidate recruitment, and the second one is running for this race, which is next month. So let me speak to we, and then I'll speak to me, all right? We need to recruit people. Now, this year, if you live in a city, you have a city election this year. Greenville is the only city that runs partisan elections. All the other cities, which is Traverse Rest, Malden, Simpsonville, Fountain Inn, and Greer, are nonpartisan. Those filings begin like July the 15th and run for about a month. So if you live in a city, I need to know after June the 13th, not before. I need to know if you like your city reps or if you want to replace them. If you like them, we want to go to them and invite them to join us, to pull them in tighter. If you want to replace them, I need you to find somebody to replace them. I met with a city rep in Greer today, and let me tell you how this matters. She showed you numbers. He's a city councilman. And I said, he's up for election this year. I said, last time around, how many people voted in your district? And he said, 300. And I said, how many people did you get? And he said, 200.
Wow.
Guess what? We know that many people. Now, he says everything's good, which, all right, maybe it is. But as an example, if we wanted to replace him, it ain't that hard. Okay? Now, if you don't live in a city, it's even easier. You were have a fire and sewer district. If you're not in a city, you have a fire and sewer district. There are positions on every fire and sewer district. I've got the list. I'll give it to Yvonne. I'll work with you. There's a ton of them. Each one has positions. Same thing. If the guys that are on there you like, we keep them and we ask them to join us. If you don't like them, we find somebody to replace them. All right? So everybody can have somebody to go out and see, are these people good? If you live in a city, we need to know about those people. If you live in a fire sewer district, we need to know about those people. All right? Good enough? Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. When do we need to know the people for the county? By June 13th, too?
Mid-June. City. Not county this year, just city. The county's next year. It's city and fire service this year.
How does the fire and sewer district, I mean, as long as the sewer keeps flowing, nothing's on fire, I'm happy, but what?
No, you're not, because they control the taxes.
Okay, thank you, all right.
Like Parker Fire
And
and
I'm going
Sewer
to tell you,
District.
if you guys dig into it, some of you that don't live in the city would pay less overall out of your pocket if you live in the city. Because those fire and sewer districts, their rates are so high because they can't do things to scale like the city.
And Joe, we got to be out of here at 8:30.
All
I
right.
think you said
Yeah, we're about to turn into pumpkins here.
That's fine. I'll be real quick.
The room has to be cleared by 8:30. So keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you out. That means chairs put away, tables put away, everything. So before you leave, I go to Brookwood Church, and they've got all these chairs on the, kind of like this. And the last one for the people that go to the 11 o'clock service, they're said, okay, we're finished. Stack your chairs.
The last one out has to do the work. All right,
No. So what I'm going to say is, there are some racks in that closet back there. So before you leave, make sure your chair is on the rack.
Okay. All right, let me tell you how this is going to work. This is simple, guys. I've got it broken down. I've figured out the whole system. I bought the data for the city of Greenville. We can buy it for the whole county. I bought the data for the city of Greenville. I said, I want to know who voted the last two Republican primaries. I identified 7,700 people that are in 5,500 unique households. I sorted that data by precinct. I printed that data onto 160 sheets. There are approximately 30 households per sheet. What I did, and we can do this for our county party, is I had door hangers made. They're pre-cut. So Yvonne has volunteered to take care of her precinct. She's a precinct captain. Come here one second. Here's how this is going to work. I go to the precinct captain, or precinct president, and I say, listen, you're going to do door knocking for whatever it is. Candidates, party, whatever. Here's the door knockers. okay? Here's the names and addresses sorted by the way the postman walks down the street. All right?
That's very good.
It tells you the name, it tells you the address, it tells you the precinct, and then it has the zip code on there. I shrunk it down. You don't need to know all the other information. These are known Republican voters. They're not Democrats. They're not non-voters. These people have voted in Republican primaries. And some of them might be. Some of them might be Democrats, but I sorted as good as I could sort it. Then we have a script. The script goes, I am blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
On the list, you can check off whatever our topic is. Like for me, will you vote for Joe? Yes, no, undecided, not home. All right, if they're not home, you hang the door knocker, you go on. The more times you do this, the more times you're going to wind up knowing people. All right? About 50% of the doors you knock on, somebody will come to. So if you get 30 addresses, you're probably going to get 15 people. I've done this before. You can get to 20 households per hour. So 30 people is about an hour and a half, and it doesn't have to be done in one day. It can be done over 2 or 3 days. You see how this works? We need to break it down to that kind of way. All right, and make it really, really simple. Now, what I need is I'm getting a lot of people in the city to try to help me, but I need some fill-ins on some things too. If any of you all, I know it's not your neighborhood, but would help me out, knock on 30 doors, and they're all in one area. I brought some with me. I would love to give you this. You just, anytime over the next couple of weeks, do this. Write yes, no, undecided. Take a picture of it. My number is on here. Text it to me. It's that simple. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to do that, by the way.
Perfect. See you after the
Yeah, I will. One piece of advice. When I walked through my neighborhood, and everyone's real nice, but there was one guy, because I got feedback, when I went up to the door, I didn't know how people felt comfortable with me or whatever. There's 2 of us guys walking up, and I got feedback. I asked the guy, and he said, well, I came to the door with a gun. I'm like, oh, really? I'll stand closer next time. No, actually, for males, if you don't have a female with you, make sure if there's stairs, make sure you're well down the stairs, where you can't get to the door in time before they can close.
I used to really go back, step down.
Yeah,
step
back. But that was kind of eye-opening to me, because that's why I was nervous as anything, knocking on doors. But that's how I flipped my precinct.
It is going out and meeting people and inviting them, and every time we knock on a door, we ought to say, "Hey, come join us June the 5th, or whatever our next event is." All right, thank you.
And one second, real quick, so we can write back and share about the baseball game.
Speaking of our next event, it is the baseball game on Friday, June 16th, 7 o'clock. There's a QR code on these posters that I put up around the room and on the front door. You can just come and scan on it. It will take you directly to the site where you can buy your ticket. Tickets are only $11. We're sitting as a group, wearing red t-shirts, wear anything red, wear Trump, wear flags. It's your chance to, show your patriotism. They're going to have call some of us down to be the games people that are on the field that day. Yeah. But so that you can play some of the games and things like that they have with
And we can make copies of these and hand them out, right? As part of our ordinance. We can make copies of these flyers.
Yes.
Yes, and hand them out, so that's a contact with people.
Yeah, I mean,
so
if you
just
want
make
to
a
give them
bunch of
out,
these and say, I'm inviting you to a baseball game.
Right, when you're walking around, door knocking the job, you can, be able to do that. You can hand out those flyers.
We're looking to try to recruit people too, so we'll
Right.
hopefully have a table set up there, we can sign people up,
Yeah,
and
it's a
get
big
them to join the party.
Yeah.
Or you can invite your neighbors.
Invite your
Invite
neighbors.
your neighbors, anybody there.
Yes, great, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and supporting us. And we got our work cut out, 532 days, remember? Our next meeting will be June 27th here. Now, there may be other meetings, so stay tuned, but June 27th here, probably the same time. Now, I'd just like to say, stack your chairs.